Stephen Horn is back, along with Lynn Bernstein, who's here to talk about this video and why she's suing the Wake County Board of Elections as an election integrity advocate, activist. Is that what we should call you, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that's a good description.
Okay. Stephen, if you don't remember him, is someone who was covering the January 6th event, however you see it, whatever lens through which you see it, and as a journalist, independent journalist, and was picked up, charged by the FBI. So just another troublemaker. So it's just three troublemakers stacked in a row here, just talking over coffee on a Monday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. So let's talk about this video. As I play it, and you can tell me when to stop. Who would like to start us, set the scene for us here?
Yeah, why don't I can go ahead. So this is a couple days before a primary election, and myself and another activist, we went up near the Board of Elections to find a spot to hold a protest on election night, because the Wake County Board of Elections doesn't allow observers on election night, and they're required to by law, but they don't actually let anyone in to observe. So we decided we would bring some light to this. So we just went up there on a Saturday afternoon to check out, what signs were around, do our due diligence to make sure we were going to hold a legal and safe protest. And so we arrived at the Board of Elections. We arrived next door to the Board of Elections and parked next door. And within a few minutes after parking, the election director had the security guard call 911 or the police dispatch, and essentially say that we were suspicious and that they wanted the police to come. And this was before we even got out of the vehicle. And this election director knows who I am. So the part you have up right now is we've got out of the car. They've called the police once on us already, and we don't know this at this point. And we walk along the road, and then we go near this open gate because there's an event happening at the Board of Elections at that time. And so the gentleman I'm with there is John Brakey, and he's the director and founder of ODYSEE out of Arizona. And he's held protests before, and so he was mentoring me a bit and said, hey, we need to check out all the different signage around. And so he was walking into this open parking lot to look at some signs, and the gate just starts closing, and you can see in that bottom window there two individuals. The one on the right is Gary Sims. He's the election director for Wake County, and the individual on the left is a private security guard, former sheriff's deputy. And they're standing in the parking lot watching, and it's circled. This video is circled there because we're not really sure what Mr. Sims has in his hands and whether or not he's actually closing that gate on us. And so you can see that he tries to go in to look at a sign. The gate starts closing, and we stand there for about a minute or so, and we realize that the gate's just opening and closing. And so we kept walking, found our protest spot, and then walked back to our vehicle. And then the police arrived, and we found out later that they had called a second time, and they've told the police, and on the video it's pretty clear that we're not doing anything, but they tell the police that they're calling the police and they want an expedited response because we are tampering with a closed gate in order to get into the Board of Elections. Now, this parking lot is pretty big, so we're really far away from the building. We're far away from any activity that's going on. It is an open event. And so, so the police came and they gave us a trespass. And what that means in North Carolina, and it's primarily used for private locations, private property, private businesses. And what that means is any person can just call the police and say, hey, I don't want this person on my property. And the police will issue them a trespass notice. Now that person doesn't have to do anything wrong. They might just, not be liked. And so they issued this trespass, but there's no appeal process. And the police, have said we didn't do anything wrong, but they had to issue this anyway. And so because there's no appeal process to it, there was nothing I could fight against in court. So I had to find an attorney who would file a lawsuit in federal court because I got no due process and my constitutional rights were taken away. Essentially, I'm not allowed to go. I wasn't, the reason why the reason I filed a lawsuit is because we were unable now to go to any meetings. We can't go file to run for office. This is an early voting site as well, and so I'm not able to even vote at this location. And so it really put a huge strain on my ability to do my advocacy work. And our organization, Transparent Elections, NC, it really took away from a lot of the work that we had been doing, because then we had to sort of refocus our energies on getting me back inside.
Stephen, oh, and I should say, Lynn, some people are saying your audio is a little choppy. I do hear it. It's like, I think it might be a microphone in your headphones. It's not too bad. I can understand what you're saying, but it's a little choppy. But while you're working on that, Stephen, is there anything else on this video that you want me to show specifically? And can you talk about what's at issue here in the different stories that are being told, like what they're saying from the Board of Elections standpoint versus what Lynn's saying? Can you explain the disparity in the stories and what we're watching on the video, if that clears anything up?
Yeah, so I don't think there's that much more on the video that you'll see. What's at issue here is the like Lynn was mentioning, sort of the way trespass works. A lot of people sort of have this idea that it's a public building, especially when it's a government building. Anyone can go in, but since it's a building that is owned by the county government, just like any other property owner, they can ask the police to issue a trespass notice. And then, like Lynn said, her only recourse is to go to court. And so basically what the county government's argument is that this was a security risk. They were suspicious people. We didn't know what they were doing. They were doing something with the gate and we couldn't really see, so that the security guard called the police. But they did know exactly who Lynn Bernstein were. I believe from the court documents, they had recognized her when she was driving around, maybe even before she had got out of her car, because Lynn Bernstein is someone who has come to the Wake County Election Board meetings. She's spoken. They mentioned some incident in which at a previous meeting, she had left a bag behind. She had left her purse or something. And that was supposedly some prior security incident, even though everyone has left their bag behind at some point. And unless you're a terrorist leaving a bomb, that's not actually a security incident. And so they're trying to paint this picture from the court saying, hey, we're not violating her First Amendment rights because, we have to keep the building safe. And so sometimes, if a drunk person stumbles into the building and starts causing trouble, they can have him trespass, and that they'll say we're not violating his rights because this is a security issue. So their argument is, okay, this is all about security. But as I said before, when Lynn arrived, they recognized her. Gary Sims, the election director, recognized her. And when you listen to the 911 call, the security guard isn't saying, hey, there's a security issue, I want this person trespassed. She's saying the election manager wants this person trespassed. The election manager knew who Lynn was, and he wanted her trespassed.
Unmute myself. Baby hiccuping under the desk. So just everybody just pretend like that's normal part of a election integrity live stream. Hiccuping actually probably is apropos for going into my wine sponsor, which apparently Jack is very excited about. Happy mom, happy family, right? As they say. So anyway, if you guys hang on one second, we're going to get back to it because Lynn has been covered before. And I wanted to ask about this before we hit the YouTube stream and cut that and continue on the other platforms. Because if you see, back in the day, Carrie Mom helps convince Board of Elections to reconsider vote on voting machines. And it was like, post 2016, as many people have found, you were allowed to question stuff around this issue. And then 2020 happened and you can't anymore. You know, it's a banned topic. And so I wanted to ask about this media coverage of it and how you're treated differently, Lynn. The work you do, you know, one election versus another. Of course, you know, on YouTube, we're going to, like I said, we'll talk briefly about it. We're going to finish up on the other platforms. We're live right now on ROKFIN and Rumble. So go check out either one of those platforms. We'll continue on there. But again, just so everybody knows, you can support my work at AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 50% off these amazing wines and 50% off shipping. They're wines I drink myself. I always tell people that, you know, obviously you can't get them at the grocery store, but they're all basically named after people who come on the podcast, and you get a complimentary bottle of wine. Like, for instance, the Rogue Malbec. What better way to describe the interviews here? And if you go to AllisonWinePromo.com, you support keeping people like these folks you're seeing right now and the producer under the desk happy and continuing to talk, and you go direct with some of the most banned people on the internet, which is another thing I wanted to bring up, because we are also live chatting on Locals. This is Steven's Locals, right, Steven? So if you want to follow Steven, I just want to give you a shout out too. Steven has a Locals page. Is it stephenhorn.locals.com?
Yeah, stephenhorn.locals.com.
Okay. And then I should also go to myallisonmorrow.locals.com, because if you would also like to support my editorial board over there, you can do that. It's $5 a month, and you get to put questions in ahead of time for interviews and go be part of my editorial board meetings on the weekends. You give me feedback from the week before, story ideas for the week ahead. Let's go to it right now. Let's see if we got the live chat going over on Locals. So check it out, AllisonMorrow.locals.com, and it's also a place where you get exclusive content. In fact, I would like to just give a shout out to my dad, who also has a Locals page, DrShipAbrahamson.locals.com, because if I can AllisonMorrow.locals.com myself, here we go. You get to see that we do Dr. Dad every week. And so, which I'm going to have a hard time finding because I should be way better prepared. Oh, here we go. This is what we did yesterday, the aluminum fluoride connection. So we do a lot of health-related topics, clean living topics, stuff like that. It's exclusive to Locals right now. So if you're watching somewhere else, go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com, sign up, become part of my editorial board, and get exclusive content like this, where we talk about, like I said, aluminum, fluoride, all that good stuff. Okay, so let's go back, y'all, to, yes, the producer's telling me it's time to go back to what we were discussing. Carrie Mom helps convince the Board of Elections to reconsider vote on voting machines. So could you tell me, I guess, Lynn, you know, generally speaking, how you feel like the work you've done has made you more adversarial over time? Like, how have things changed? Because I mean, I guess I'm making an assumption here, but just seeing this headline that Stephen shared with me earlier, and then seeing now you're somebody who's trespassed, it's like, how did you go from somebody who gets positive coverage in the news to somebody who gets, you know, I don't want to say accosted, somebody who gets contacted by the police, you know, over the work that you're doing? How did you go from one to the other?
Yeah, so it's interesting that different election boards, we have 100 counties in North Carolina, so different election boards, they handle things a little differently. And it's funny you mentioned 2016, because that's when I started getting involved in elections. My background is actually in testing and aerospace engineering, and I didn't anticipate ever doing election work, but somebody after the 2016 election said, hey, you did testing on spacecraft. Can you look and see how well our machines are tested? And so I looked into it, and I was pretty concerned. And so it was something I just couldn't let go. It just kept eating away at me. And so I ended up doing a lot of research. I ended up starting to go to a Board of Elections meetings. And really with Wade County, from the very first meeting, they're not used to having people there. They did not like me asking about the machines, asking about modems, asking about all sorts of things that I was confused about based on the documentation. Is a little contradictory to what they were saying. And so I just asked them about it. And so they were pretty hostile to me from the very beginning in Wake County. And the same is true for the state board. Now, I think the media was willing to cover some things before the 2020 election that they aren't covering now after. But even leading up to the 2020 election, I went to the media and said, hey, there are these issues that we need to correct before the 2020 general election, and they wouldn't even cover them then. And so I think even leading up right before the 2020 election, they were even becoming hesitant at that point to even cover anything that questioned at all any part of the process. In fact, one of the reporters, local reporters, they reported out this process of how we were processing absentee ballots. And I called him and I said, yeah, that's not really what we're doing. You're quoting the law and that's what we're supposed to be doing, but that's not actually what we're doing. And I wasn't sure if you were aware of that. And he said he was aware of it and that the editors wouldn't let him, they did not want to do that because they didn't want to worry people. And so at that point, I really put
Can I just, I got to just jump in real fast because I just think that's hilarious that they would be concerned about worrying people on one topic and then drive people to near hysteria on other topics, like depending on if they're hysterical. I mean, having worked in television news, I feel like that's really the Rorschach test here. It's like, if we are hysterical, then we feel like you should be hysterical too. If we're not really feeling like it's that big of a deal, then we don't want to freak you out. We're trying not to freak you out. It's just so funny to me how these decisions, these editorial decisions are made. I just had to say that.
Well, and I think also that some of these journalists aren't doing their due diligence, right? They're looking at local advocates and they're questioning everything we're doing. And then an election official tells them, oh yeah, of course we're processing these absentee ballots the proper way. And I mean, even when they tell them they're not, they're still reporting that they are. And it really opened my eyes to how much censorship there really is. And I guess this whole thing since I got into elections in 2016, it's just been a real eye opener about just our civil liberties, really.
Okay, let's consider wrapping here and continue on the other platforms. What's next for your lawsuit against Wake County? Where does it stand?
Right, so right now, I won the preliminary injunction, which means the trial is going to be in about a year, but we didn't want to wait another year for me to go in because the reason I understand the process so well in Wake County and in other places is that when you go and you actually watch these election processes, you get so much information, and that's really where I uncovered several issues that the elections processes that I was seeing. And so unless you're really in there, you can't really do observing work. And so we didn't want to wait that full time. We wanted to get me in there as soon as possible. And so it's been 6 months that I've missed 6 months of meetings. I've missed the entire observing of this previous election, pretty much, actually the whole thing. And so we went to court. We got a preliminary injunction where the judge says, he agreed with us. He said, yes, it does not appear that you did anything wrong. It does not appear that they haven't shown that you were a threat, and you're likely to win in court, and therefore they're going to go ahead and allow me to come back to meetings. And then for the other part of the lawsuit where the election director has defamed me, has told a lot, I've lost positions locally, observing positions and things based on what I believe are lies that they're telling about me. And so, and also Mr. Sims has been physically aggressive towards me as well. And so we are taking that up in that lawsuit as well. So those things will be heard in about a year during a trial. But for right now, I'm allowed back in. I'm allowed to continue doing my work. And this coming January will be the first meeting that I go back, that I'm allowed back to. So I am a little nervous about that because I do realize that they're looking for any reason possible for me not to be a keen-eyed observer. The incident with the bag is really interesting. I just want to mention this real quick because, people can write whatever they want in lawsuits, and, what they're saying is actually really unfair. It was after a meeting. I had my bag that was sitting on a chair. I maybe standing 10 feet away from my bag. Everyone's just in that room sort of mingling after the meeting and talking. And I'm standing about a foot from the door and about 10 feet from my bag on the other side that's sitting on a chair. I didn't actually leave that room. Mr. Sims came up to me. He's 6'2", I'm 5'2", I'm pretty short. He like leans into me, gets within, this close to my face, nose to nose. And he just goes, "Get out." And I'm, I'm worried that he's going to, to do this in front of the board, in front of people who are at this meeting is pretty aggressive. And so I don't really know what this guy is capable of. And so I just started walking out of that room at that point, because I brought two bags. I had one purse, and then I had a bag that had some video recording equipment and things like that. And so I ended up taking a couple steps out of the room because I'm a little terrified. And somebody says, "Hey, you forgot your bag." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I went back in, I grabbed my bag, and I walked out with a board member who was saying, "Wow, he's really rude, and I'm so sorry that he's being so rude to you." So it wasn't that I, left a bag. It was that I was standing and talking to people, and they didn't, and the board was not, wasn't very happy that after the 2020 election, I had reached out to many different groups and said, "Hey, why don't you guys come to this meeting? I will kind of show you what they're doing," because they were opening ballots, they were processing ballots at this meeting. And so I wanted to let people know what was going on in the room, because the board actually doesn't say what's going on. And so people just walk out wondering what they just saw. And so they were, I think, upset that I had brought maybe 15 people in, and normally there's almost nobody at those meetings. And so the director was really not happy that I was standing around talking to them afterwards.
Okay, I wanted to ask you real fast. Let's tell people what this is before we move over. Our mission is to confirm that every eligible vote is counted as the voter intended by working with elections officials to ensure that elections are secure, transparent, robustly audited, and publicly verified. Is this where people can keep up with your work?
That is, yeah, that's where people can keep up with what I'm doing. And the Take Action page, we do trainings that apply to people in all different states. We have a lot of different projects. And, I do want to say that it's not that I haven't worked with elections officials, because I have been able to change 2 or 3 of the processes, including that absentee ballot processing that they were doing. And so the state has adopted some of my ideas, but now they have new leadership, and the new leadership is not really keen on transparency.
Okay, and Stephen, actually, I wanted to ask you about this too before we go. What's this?
Yeah, so that was just, my reporting on the last protest that Lynn held. So this was November, I don't know, I can't really see because I have a small screen here. So she was out there with her group holding a protest. They had some signs thanking election officials. They had some signs calling for transparency. And so I believe this was the night of the election. And so when we were out there, we saw that they had put up like this black fabric over the fence in the parking lot. So I'm not sure what that was for, because they have a sign there that says, designated observance area. But if you're standing by the sign and you look at the parking lot where they're bringing in, the cars are coming from all the voting stations with, the official voting data, they have this black fabric covering the fence. So from the observation area, there's not really much you can see. And I think that's a little further down the thread.
Yeah, so Stephen, I'm not sure if you're aware that we were the ones. So we've asked to stand in the parking lot and watch the processes where at least we could count the number of precincts that brought stuff back and see if those much, just get any information we can to validate or verify what they're doing. And so we had made some signs that said observation area, because that's where we had previously gone on election night to stand and watch the parking lot. And so we thought, okay, we're going to keep the observers, away from the protesters, and so that we weren't, intimidating anyone, we weren't doing anything. And so because we were doing our due diligence and we wanted to make sure that everyone knew where we were standing and that we weren't going to be harassing anyone, we were actually going to put thank you signs near where the actual election workers were coming back with materials. And so the last protest before this one, we had people standing where this picture was taken, and you could see inside the parking lot, and you could at least see, were they handing everyone all the packets of stuff that they were supposed to hand. You could do it if you had some binoculars. And so when we got to the protest this night, we went to go set up that area, and we see that they've put up this essentially screen so we can't see anything. And we thought, you know what, we're just going to leave this here, these signs here to show, hey, this is at least what we should. Yeah, so we made it clear that, don't yell at them, don't interfere in any way, because I'm really mindful of that. I've been an election official before. I've worked our elections before. I've been a political observer. I've been just a public observer. And so I do understand that there is some harassment that some people are actually facing, but that's not from us, and it's not from anyone who is at our protests, and it's not from anyone who volunteers for our group. So
is that your sign that's in that picture?
Is.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I was a little confused about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we good for this part? And then I want to ask you, I got some questions from locals. So again, everybody go over to AllisonMorrow.locals.com and get Dr. Dad, as you see here, but also get to put in your questions ahead of time. And you post story ideas. See, all these are story ideas for me to cover. So a great way to support my work. And also, like I said, go direct with some of the most censored people on the internet. So I will take a couple questions here. Thanks everybody for watching on YouTube. Check out the live stream on Rumble and ROKFIN, and go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com and check out the websites we showed you for Stephen and Lynn. We will see you over on
so can I, before we leave YouTube, so what I just wanted to say is, this story covering this lawsuit for me, this Bernstein v. Sims, Bernstein is suing the Wake County Board of Elections. This is really the story that I like to cover, the type of story I like to cover as an independent journalist, for two reasons. The first is that, I like covering local stories. This is in my backyard. I'm a Wake County voter, so this is very, very relevant to me and the people in my area. And the second reason is that this, as we sort of talked about, this kind of story is not really something that the mainstream media wants to touch nowadays. They might have in the past, but now, you're not going to find an article in the News and Observer or WRAL about this. So if you all want to, follow my reporting, I'll certainly be posting updates about this case. You can find me on Twitter, Stephen Horn. I also have a Telegram channel. That's t.me/Stephen Horn. And then also stephenhorn.locals.com. And if you sign up there, there's a promo code elections, and you can get a free month of members only access. So that's stephenhorn.locals.com, promo code elections.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we will see you over there.